Ira Kaufman joins me now, who covers the NFL and specifically the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We're going to touch on some big NFL headlines. Ira, thanks so much for being with me.
My pleasure. You know, Carolyn, that big sigh of relief you heard, it came from Buck Nation last night about 7:30 last night.
I was going to say, how big was this win, these late game heroics? You could see it written on Tom Brady's face. Everything that he's been through this season has been so well documented on the field and off the field. What did that win mean, do you think, to this group?
You know, Carolyn, he's looked a little more relaxed since the divorce became finalized and public rather than just the object of daily speculation. So he's looked a little more at ease. But last night was huge for this franchise. I mean, look, they still have offensive doldrums. There's no question about it. And if they go to Munich and lose to Seattle Sunday, nobody's going to remember that comeback. But both of those teams needed some kind of a jolt or a reason to believe. I think the Rams are basically toast because they're in a tougher division. And we'll see what happens with the Bucs. But they really needed that win.
There's been so much made about everything that Tom Brady has gone through. And I kind of agree with you, Ira, that now that the cat is officially out of the bag, so to speak, maybe he can relax and refocus on what he initially committed to before the season began, which was playing another season of football. I imagine, just being around the team when everything's going on with Tom Brady and it's on a global scale the way that it has been, there's no question that seeps into sort of the team dynamic and chemistry. I mean, is this sort of a sigh of relief? Could this be a turning point even in the season? Okay, the divorce is finalized and that's behind him. He's here to play football. That's what he said. Now we have a huge win, these late game heroics that people have come to expect but haven't seen so far this season. And now we can turn the corner a little bit.
Not only was it huge for the players, Carolyn, but for the coaching staff. I mean, Byron Leftwich, the offensive coordinator, he was under siege from here. The local media in Tampa was killing him. Unimaginative game plans. Does Brady even have any belief in this guy anymore? Todd Bowles, a first-year coach. Carolyn, they were on their way to going 6-11 with Tom Brady, and the ownership is going to look at that after the season at Todd Bowles, and I don't care if it's a one-year deal. They got to wonder whether we can win with this guy going forward without Brady. So we'll see what happens. I don't want to get ahead of myself, Carolyn. They still have their own problems. They can't run the ball. They just can't. The offensive line with those three new starters, it's a work in progress. They got some injuries on defense. But Brady's holding up. Carolyn, he's throwing the ball 55 times a game. He's over the 100,000-yard mark for his career. He got that on Sunday night. But we'll see. We're going to know a lot more after the Munich game. It's a very surprisingly good Seattle team.
Do they have any other choice offensively, Ira, than to just rely on Tom Brady to keep throwing the ball as much as we've seen? Because you mentioned the lack of production in the run game, and I don't know how you solve for that when it's as bad as it is.
The Rams are going through the same thing, Carolyn, the same thing. Neither of those teams last night, the two, previous Super Bowl winners, have abysmal running games, just terrible. I don't see that changing. I think Brady's going to throw 50 balls a game starting in Munich on Sunday. It's going to continue. You wonder whether he can hold up at the age of 45. But, Carolyn, to be fair, he doesn't take a lot of hits. He doesn't. He's so adept at getting the ball out fast. That's the way it's going to be. He's going to throw 50 balls a game, play a little defense, get some takeaways, and that's going to, in a weak division, that might be good enough.
How much of that is experience? The fact that he has so many years in the league to train himself to avoid taking those hits that would make this a very long and difficult season with how many times he's being asked to throw the ball?
I think it's all his experience. Look, he's not Jalen Hurts out there in terms of mobility. You know that. You've been watching him for 23 years. But, he doesn't get sacked very much. He doesn't take a lot of hits. And that's with three new interior linemen on this Buck team going forward. That Ali Marpet retirement really hurt. That Gronkowski retirement really hurt. Carolyn, I hate to start it, but now there's a new rumor in Tampa that Gronk may come back just because they won one I'm not buying it, Carol. I'm not buying it.
Ira, what are you saying to me here? What are you doing here?
Hey, by the way, Carol, may I say this about the Rams? Because I saw Sean McVay after the game, and he looked like the Walking Dead. I mean, you just can't believe it. They made a cardinal mistake yesterday. 59 minutes, great defense. Brady got the ball with 44 seconds left. They had 2 timeouts, and the Rams decided that Brady didn't have enough time to go down the field for 60 yards and score a touchdown. Carol, the clock is not going to beat Tom Brady. You cannot play a prevent defense and let him get 20 yards at a clip, or you're going to lose that game. And that's what happened.
It's a great point. And we've seen that happen in the past. I mean, you can't do that to Tom Brady. You can't give him that much time. So for the local guys, before we move on and kind of go around the league down in Tampa, when you process everything that we saw with the late game comeback against the Rams, what's the headline from you guys from this game in terms of the big takeaway for what it ultimately meant for the season?
The headline's a beautiful flight to Munich. That's the headline. The question is, will it be a beautiful flight home from Munich? Seattle's not bad, Carolyn, as you know. Geno Smith, I don't know, he came out of nowhere. You talk about resurrecting a career. He might win comeback player, Carolyn, but comeback from what? He never had established anything. So it's a very strange situation with Seattle. A little bit of new life for the Buccaneers. Maybe they get some more guys back after the bye week and make a late charge. And you know what? Let's be honest. It's going to take 9 or 10 wins to win this division, probably 9. And you got to think the Bucs can get there with Tom Brady.
It's so interesting to live in New York, Ira, where I live, and follow the Giants and Jets closely and think about this kid, Geno Smith, who has now seemingly been plugged into Pete Carroll's system and is, by all accounts, a perfect fit. I mean, how much credit does Pete Carroll deserve in all of this? Those who really know him and spend a lot of time with him, I think, know what a good coach he is. But is he the reason why this whole thing has worked in Seattle?
I think people were sleeping on Pete Carroll for the last couple of years. I think they really were. Seattle's changed a lot. The Legion of Doom is long gone. I saw Bobby Wagner last night. He's in a Ram uniform, and the Richard Sherman days and Cam Chancellor, and, they're gone. So he's resurrected himself. He's always believed in that power running game. Now they got this kid, Kenneth Walker, who looks really good. They got 2 good receivers. But the big story is Geno Smith. He's not making mistakes. They're winning the games they should win, like beating a bad Arizona team last night on the road. And now they got the Bucs. That's a pick'em game. Carolyn, they could be 7-3 by Sunday. They could be.
Is this an indictment of Russell Wilson in any way, or do you just view this as a separate issue, that this is something that has clicked here, that Pete Carroll, like you said, might not have gotten enough credit, and now they find the quarterback that makes sense for what he wants to do out there? Or is this just a further proof that maybe Russell wasn't as good as we thought?
I don't think it's a coincidence, Carolyn, because like a lot of guys before him and after him, Russell Wilson had worn out his welcome in Seattle. He wasn't happy. And when your star player isn't happy, Carolyn, that filters down to the other 52 guys. It has to. They were going nowhere with Russell Wilson. And everybody thought Seattle would be in the market looking for a quarterback in the 2023 draft. And now maybe they're not. It solves a lot of problems when you got a quarterback that's playing as well as Geno Smith. Look, I think they're for real. I think the 49ers are good, and I think they're poised to make a run. But Seattle's not going anywhere because they play fundamental football, just like Pete Carroll's teams always have.
Yeah. Fascinating to think about this as what was pegged as a rebuilding year, and now they found this guy, and Pete Carroll's just shining. And, I think he deserves it, to be honest. When you think about the Jets, speaking of all the surprises that we've seen this season, I mean, there are teams that are typically juggernauts who are underperforming. There are teams who are surprising us, and the Jets beating the Bills. I mean, are the Jets for real?
Fantastic win. I feel good for Robert Saleh. He's going to be good. I mean, he knows defense from his 49er days. He's very aggressive. He's not afraid to talk to the New York media, which I think is important, at least in the beginning, because if you're a milquetoast, Carolyn, and you don't do well in New York, they'll kill you. They'll absolutely kill you. I think Todd Bowles was a victim of that those last 3 years. When you stand there with your arms folded, it's fine when you win. When you don't in New York, then they come after you. It was a tremendous win for the Jets because going in, nobody gave them a chance. Absolutely nobody. They scored a lot of points. Their best player, Breece Hall, is gone, and they keep marching on. And you know what? They're looking strong for a wild card right now, and that hurts this little team in Tampa. I think you got to win the NFC South, Carolyn. If you have any chance to make the playoffs, and I think Buck fans know that.
Yeah, absolutely. Brian Daboll's also kind of new to the New York scene, and I think has handled himself pretty well with the media and also with what he's been able to do with the Giants this season. I mean, it couldn't get any worse, to be honest, to be a New York football fan around here. And I think fans are just thrilled to have a guy at the helm of the Giants that seems like he knows what he's doing. Has he been one of the more positive surprises for you in terms of new coaches in the league this season that have been able to do a lot with a little?
He looks like the real deal, Carolyn. He really does. And he's the kind of guy that New Yorkers gravitate. Look, I'm a New Yorker. I know what goes on in that town. If you're Ray Handley and you've got no personality and you're losing, you're not going to last. You got no chance in New York. They're going to drum you out. You're a New Yorker. You see what goes on there. He's got the personality that New Yorkers love. I think Philly's very much a town like New York. They also like the blue-collar guys, the Parcells guys that are screamers. And Daboll gets it. Daniel Jones is growing, I think, on Giant fans. This is a big year for Daniel Jones. And right now, the way things are, I think they keep him. I think they sign him to an extension.
That is unbelievable to hear you say that when you consider just not only the vitriol from the fan base who just wanted him gone before the season started to all the pressure that he's been feeling. And there's been injuries and all this stuff. But like you said, this was very much a make it or break it year. And he has played incredible. A lot of people were talking about Daboll when he came into the start of the season of, oh, this is the guy who made Josh Allen. Maybe he could do it to Daniel Jones. And I think there was some skepticism around that. But I imagine that something must be working between the two to see Daniel Jones playing the way that he's been playing.
He has matured. And you know what really helps? Having Saquon Barkley healthy. Boy, I got to give that guy a lot of credit. A lot of guys can't come back from a major injury. Look at Cam Akers. I saw him last night. He's not the same player. That Achilles, he wasn't the same player last year when he came back from it. He doesn't look the same. He can't make anybody miss. You never know what's going to happen when you have a major injury like that to a running back. And Barkley is all the way back. He's been one of the great stories all season. And I think they're going to ride him right into the postseason.
That's another great point. What about what's going on in Green Bay? I mean, Aaron Rodgers looks miserable. There's all kinds of rumors of him being at odds with whoever, front office, coaching staff, typical stuff from Aaron Rodgers. He seems to be a hard guy to please. But what a disappointing season.
I've always said this about Aaron Rodgers, and I know it sounded cruel when I said it, but I think it's coming to pass. He's a fantastic front runner. Fantastic. When things are going well. He's great. One of the great natural throwers we've ever seen. Carolyn, when things go awry and things start to break down, I don't see a lot of leadership from Aaron Rodgers. I never have. I just never have. Last year, they came into Tampa. They were up 10-0 in the first quarter. He was playing well. He threw a pick six early in the game. It turned the whole game around, and they got blown out, and Rodgers was never the same once it started going downhill. I think that's going to be one of his legacies. Of course, his other legacies got, I think, 4 MVP awards. And he's going to Hall of Fame, and I'm going to vote for him, because I'm the Tampa representative for Canton. So, he's an open and shut case. I'm not going to argue that. But when things go wrong, I'm not sure I want Aaron Rodgers on my team.
Wow. Yeah. He seems like a guy who would be quick to blame somebody else. And I'm not saying the problems are his fault, but when you hear about all the stuff going on behind the scenes and the way that he's at odds with the coaching staff and everything, you're right. I mean, that doesn't seem to be indicative of a guy who's going to take ownership and take leadership. And, I look at some of these quarterbacks in the league too, and just thinking back to Russell Wilson, I'm not sure his team in Denver right now really believes that he's a true leader. I think they kind of see through some of his shtick, and I don't know him personally, but you kind of get that sense on the sidelines that, leadership really does matter. True, authentic, genuine leadership, not just a guy who's going to say the right things or show up when life's good. I mean, is that still a quality that's important for quarterbacks in the NFL today, to have that sort of gravitas factor, leadership factor? Tom Brady, to his credit, has had that over the course of his career.
I'm glad you mentioned Brady, because I was going to use that as the prime example. Carolyn, who's gone through a more public scrutiny than Tom Brady in 2022?
Nobody.
You're familiar with your New York Post, Carolyn. I know the New York Post. I swear, it looks like they've got two guys shadowing Brady and Giselle every day. And he doesn't even play for a New York team. Mm-hmm. Magazines, people, they're all over him. There's kids involved. It's messy. And yet he never takes a step backwards. You know how many interceptions he's thrown this year, Carolyn? One. And he's like leading the league in pass attempts. So, look, they're struggling on offense. They're not scoring a lot of touchdowns. But it's hard for me to put the blame at Tom Brady's feet. His leadership is just off the charts, always has been, and that's never going to change.
Yeah, I completely agree. When you look at the trade deadline, Ira, and some of these big moves that we saw, what stood out to you? Is there a player or two that you really think is ultimately going to be a game changer?
Maybe Bradley Chubb, and Denver threw in the towel, and I don't blame them. They're not going anywhere in the AFC West. They're looking up at the Chiefs, of course, and now the Chargers are 5-3. I think Denver's sort of writing on the wall, and we got to retrench, even with Russell Wilson. So I think that move is going to pay off. I was a little surprised the Bucs didn't do anything, Carolyn, but to me, it was a reflection. We're in the NFC South. I think we can win this thing as is. We'll get some players back. This Antoine Winfield, he's a safety. His father played in the league. He's a really good player. And when he comes back, which I think could be as early as the Munich game on Sunday, he's going to make a big difference. And the defense is playing pretty well without him. This is a good defense. Akeem Hicks is back. Vita Vea is playing well. So we'll see. I think the Bucs win 9 or 10 games.
Yeah, I'm not sure the defense has been given enough credit just because of where all the headlines have been. When you look at what's going on out in Vegas, a fascinating situation for me, Ira, because I kind of thought Derek Carr was going to offer a little bit more this season for whatever reason. Everybody talked about Davante Adams and they have a relationship, and now he's got the weapons around him. And the organization, to their credit, I think has done a pretty good job of surrounding him with the pieces that he would need to be successful. But is it time for these two to move on from each other at this point?
There's something wrong in Vegas, and I don't mean the slot machines, Carolyn. There's something wrong. Look, he's got Davante. Josh Jacobs is having a big season. Davante Adams is living up to his hype. I don't know what's going on with Waller. He's in and out of the lineup. Renfro's been terrible this year. He's a pretty good receiver. Max Crosby is a heck of a pass rusher. This Chandler Jones move that they made, it hasn't worked out at all. He looks like he's done. And Josh McDaniels, Carolyn, he just looks to me like another in a long line of Belichick disciples that when they get away from Foxborough, can't get the job done. And he's going to be the latest one. And he's never going to get another chance after this. Never.
So you think this is more a coaching issue than a quarterback issue?
I do, because I think Carr's okay. If they get better coaching, a lot of people had big expectations for the Raiders. They thought they could challenge the Chiefs and the Chargers, and
included. Yeah,
they don't know how to win right now. They just don't know how to win.
Yeah. And, they didn't really know how to win last year at certain times in the season, too, if I recall, right? I mean, they're one of those teams where it's like disappointing because they've got all the pieces and you want them to be right there. And then at the end of the day, they're just missing something. They're missing that one thing that's going to get them over the line, and they ultimately come up short.
Maybe they should have given the job to Rich Bisaccia, Carolyn. He did a good job replacing Gruden, and he had no chance. You knew it, and I knew it. When Mark Davis said, well, if he goes 11-1, he'll have a chance. I mean, you talk about a terrible statement. That told Bisaccia right then and there, he's got no chance to get the permanent job. I saw him, Carolyn. He's with Green Bay now. So I saw him week 3 after the Bucs game. And he had a little bit of smile on his face with the woes of the Raiders because he's still upset that he didn't get a chance.
Yeah, I'm sure. How could you not be? When you look at where we are right now in the season, 10 weeks, right at kind of at a little bit past, I guess, that midway point. Who are the four sort of front runners that you see that are really going to be contenders when this goes down the stretch into the playoffs?
I think everyone is looking forward to maybe a Bills-Chiefs AFC title game. I mean, the game would be in Buffalo, probably, because they got the tiebreaker. I would lean towards the Bills in that game, but it would be a heck of a game because of those two quarterbacks. And we remember last year's, epic. In the NFC, obviously the Eagles are the favorite team to reach Glendale in February, and tough to argue that. Carolyn, are they going 17-0? No. By the way, I'm reading a book about the 72 Dolphins. I'm just reading this book right now. It just came out. 50th anniversary of the perfect season. Sorry, Eagle fans, you're not going 17-0, but you're probably going to end up with the top seed. I'm still looking at San Francisco. I am, because I think they got a good defense when healthy. I think McCaffrey, to your point about the trade deadline, I think that was a great move for the Niners. He's had a very good season with a terrible Carolina team, and I think he's going to really help them. Garoppolo does just enough. He doesn't kill you with a bad pick. And they got weapons with Samuel. Ayuk's not bad. Kittle's not bad. Look for the 49ers, Carolyn. I think that could be dangerous.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I'm going to write that down and remember that you said it. Ira, I won't keep you too much longer, but I do want to end with something sort of away from the field of play. I've covered this Dan Snyder story a couple of different times, been at NFL owners meetings and listened to Jerry Jones and others sort of defend this guy until very recently. Now most of us know, if you're watching this, you probably know, about all these pending investigations and that they're starting to, the rumor mill is starting to swirl that he's going to sell this team potentially to maybe even Jeff Bezos or Jay-Z or whoever. But it sounds like the Commanders and the Snyders are on their way to parting ways. How overdue is this? And what are your thoughts kind of around them moving on from a franchise that is estimated to be worth so much more than it was when they originally picked it up?
Let's not feel sorry for Mr. Daniel Snyder, Carolyn. Let's not. He's going to walk away with $5 billion in profits. I mean, Jerry Jones, I think, is no longer his stalwart protector, which he has been. And Jerry's got a big voice in that room, no question about it. Carolyn, don't discount the stadium factor. And by that, I mean FedEx is a terrible stadium. It's just awful. Not that old, but it was bad the day they built it. Just bad. I'm surprised Snyder's still standing at the moment, but it's not going to be much longer. And going forward, they're going to get a new stadium, I think in the district, which is what they want, not in Landover, Maryland. And that's not going to happen with Snyder still at the helm. So all these factors are weighing in. I don't think the league wanted to take a vote because, Carolyn, I'm not sure they could get 24 owners to turn on Snyder. Some of them are still supporting him. He might have some dirt on guys. Who knows? But, Carolyn, I think it's a done deal. He's going to be gone sooner rather than later, and the league's going to be better for it.
Are we ever going to be in a place in the NFL, Ira, where guys who deserve to be held accountable will be held accountable just for the sake of that? Or is it going to be what we're seeing now, which is he's got likely, and this is just me speculating, a bunch of dirt on a bunch of guys that he's been holding over their heads, and the NFL has been put in a position where, they're going to have to break ties with this guy. It just seems to me like this has taken so much longer than it should, and it shouldn't be that difficult to get an owner out of a league when they are participating in what has been described as alleged criminal behavior.
I think it's a reflection of the new breed of owners that are in the league. David Tepper, to me, is a prime example. Hedge fund manager in Charlotte, impatient. But the old guard, the Maras, the Rooneys, they were very protective of the league image. Now, Roger Goodell talks about the shield every day, 6 times a week. Carolyn, the shield. But when it comes down to it, there's very little accountability unless their hand is forced. And Carolyn, you can't tell me that they're not aware of some of the results of this ongoing investigation. They are, and none of it looks good for Daniel Snyder. So when forced, they'll make a move. Jerry Richardson, remember, he had to get out of the league. He was a good friend of Goodell's, but at a certain point, Carolyn, you can't support him anymore. But it takes time. This new breed owner, it's all about the shekels, the money. You can't lose money as an owner. There'll be 47 people bidding for the Washington franchise, and let's see what happens. But your point is well taken. Accountability, it's like number 6 on the list.
It's so true. Ira, this was really fascinating. Great insight from you. Thanks so much for taking a couple minutes with me.
Enjoyed it, Carolyn. Thanks.